GCSE English Language, Paper 1, To Kill a Mockingbird. What's drama and what is suspense? Lesson objectives. To listen to an extract from To Kill a Mockingbird. To consider what makes a text dramatic. To consider the features of suspense. To practice reading exam questions starting with question 4. To write a story opening or a descriptive question 5. To Kill a Mockingbird, written by Harper Lee, 1960. In this extract, set in America during the 1930s, a mad dog has been reported roaming the streets of a small town. The local sheriff, a man named Mr. Tate, has been called to shoot the dog for public safety. The narrator's father, a lawyer named Atticus Finch, shoots the dog, much to the amazement of his 2 young children, Jeb and Scout, who have no idea their father possesses such skill with a rifle. I thought mad dogs foamed at the mouth, galloped, leaped and lunged at throats, and I thought they did it in August. Had the dog behaved thus, I would have been less frightened. Nothing is more deadly than a deserted, waiting street. The trees were still. The mockingbirds were silent. The carpenters at Miss Maudie's house had vanished. I heard Mr. Tate sniff, then blow his nose. I saw him shift his gun to the crook of his arm. I saw Miss Stephanie Crawford's face framed in the glass window of her front door. Miss Maudie appeared and stood beside her. Atticus put his foot on the rung of a chair and rubbed his hand slowly down the side of his thigh. "There he is," he said softly. The mad dog came into sight, walking dazedly in the inner rim of the curve parallel to the Radley house. "Look at him," whispered my brother. "Mr. Heck said they walked in a straight line. He can't even stay in the road." "He looks more sick than anything," I said. Mr. Tate put his hand to his forehead and leaned forward. "He's mad, all right, Mr. Finch." The dog was advancing at a snail's pace, but he was not playing or sniffing at foliage. He seemed dedicated to one course and motivated by an invisible force that was inching towards us. We could see him shiver like a horse shedding flies. His jaw opened and shut. He was rabid and he was coming towards us. The dog reached the side street that ran in front of the Radley place, and what remained of his poor mind made him pause and seem to consider which road he should take. He made a few hesitant steps and stopped in front of the Radley gate. Then he tried to turn around but was having difficulty. Atticus said, "He's within range. Heck, you better get him now before he goes down the side street. Lord knows who's around the corner. Go inside, Cal." Calpurnia opened the screen door, latched it behind her, then unlatched it and held on to the hook. She tried to block Jem and me with her body, but we looked out from beneath her arms. "Take him, Mr. Finch." Mr. Tate handed the rifle to Atticus. Jem and I nearly fainted. "Don't waste time. Heck," said Atticus. "Go on. Mr. Finch, this is a one-shot job." Atticus shook his head vehemently. "Don't just stand there. Heck, he won't wait all day for you." "For God's sake, Mr. Finch, look where he is. Miss, and you'll go straight into the Radley house. I can't shoot that well, and you know it." "I haven't shot a gun in 30 years. Mr. Tate almost threw the rifle at Atticus. "I'd feel mighty comfortable if you did now," he said. In a fog, Jem and I watched our father take the gun and walk into the middle of the street. He walked quickly, but I thought he moved like an underwater swimmer. Time had slowed to a nauseating crawl. When Atticus raised his glasses, Calpurnia murmured, "Sweet Jesus, help him," and put her hands to her cheeks. Atticus put his glasses to his forehead. They slipped down, and he dropped them in the street. In silence, I heard them crack. Atticus rubbed his eyes and chin. We saw him blink hard. In front of the Radley gate, the dog had made up what was left of his mind. He'd finally turned himself around to pursue his original course up our street. He made 2 steps forward, then stopped and raised his head. We saw his body go rigid, with movements so swift they seemed simultaneous. Atticus' hand yanked a ball-tipped lever as he brought the gun to his shoulder. The rifle cracked. The dog leaped, flopped over and crumpled on the sidewalk in a brown and white heap. He didn't know what hit him. Jem became vaguely articulate. "Did you see him, Scout? Did you see him just standing there? And all of a sudden he just relaxed all over and it looked like that gun was a part of him. And he did it so quick like, I have to aim for 10 minutes before I can hit something. Miss Maudie grinned wickedly. Well now, she said, still think your father can't do anything? Still ashamed of him? No, ma'am, I said meekly. I forgot to tell you the other day that besides playing the harp, Atticus Finch was the deadest shot in Macomb County in his time. Question 4. Focus this part of your answer from line 41 to the end of the extract. A student, having read this part of the text, said, "The writer makes this moment of the story very dramatic." To what extent do you agree? 20 marks. In your response, you should write about the way that the writer increases the tension, evaluate how the writer makes this a dramatic moment, and support your opinions with quotations from the text. Here are some ideas about what drama constitutes from various websites. Add complications, raise the stakes, make it personal, and add tension. Leave something to the imagination, say more with less. Make readers work to put the pieces together, don't give away everything at the start, use a narrative hook. Start close to the end of a short story, use your ordering. Ramp up your characters' desires, jazz up the conflict in the dialogue, and consider death. Use the first person, use the right vocabulary for the scene, for example, stroll, stagger, stride, swagger, or saunter for walking, depending on the mood. Sentence structures, for example, I didn't realise there was a body behind the door until I opened it, is nowhere near as dramatic as, not until I opened the door did I realise there was a body behind it. And use dialogue. There's a body behind the door, said Simon. So which of these techniques do you think Harper Lee uses? Stop the video and think and look back at the text. I think Harper Lee uses these techniques. I think she adds complications, for example, Atticus not wanting to use the gun and Mr. Tate not being very good shot. Raise the stakes, well, it's a rabid dog and people's health is in danger. Make it personal, definitely personal, Atticus's children are in danger. Add tension, that happens all the way through as the dog is tracked by Mr. Tate and Atticus. Leave something to the imagination, say more with less. I'm not sure about that, but you might disagree with me. Make readers work to put the pieces together. Don't give away everything at the start. Use a narrative hook. I think the mention of the dog at the start is a narrative hook because you want to find out more about it. Start close to the end of a short story. It's not a short story, so I don't think that works here. Ramp up your character's desires. I don't think the desire here is particularly strong for anything apart from protecting the children. Jazz up the conflict in the dialogue. There is quite a lot of conflict in the dialogue, and obviously death is a possibility with a rabid dog on the loose. It's written in the first person, and if you look, there is various vocabulary which is appropriate to the situation. Try and find an interesting sentence structure that puts drama into the action, and there is plenty of dialogue, as we said previously. Question 3. Now you need to think about the whole of the source. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? You might write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning, how and why the writer changes focus as the extract develops, and any other structural features that interest you. Stop the video and see if you can answer this question and think about any parts of the text which are designed to retain your interest as a reader and how that's done. Here are some ideas about the structural features in this text. How does the focus change? We start with a narrative hook about a mad dog, but we don't know exactly what's happening. The text switches between the actions of the dog, the children and Calpurnia, Mr. Tate and Atticus. The writer zooms in to details about Atticus and out again to the wider scene after he's shot the dog. An unexpected decision is made, which engages the characters and the reader. Dialogue adds interest, showing the fears and surprise of the characters. The children learn something new about their father. Question 2. Read lines 41 to 55. How does the writer use language to create suspense for the reader? You might comment on words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. Here are those lines. Stop the video and try and pick out some of the language and explain why the writer has used it. I've chosen these parts of the text to answer this question about language and suspense. So this part of the passage starts with "in a fog," so everybody's senses are a little bit numb. We're not really sure what's happening. And the writer uses the phrases "underwater swimmer, time had slowed, nauseating cruel" to slow down the action, which kind of goes with the fog. Although just above it mentions that he walked very quickly. So there is a bit of a shuttle between fast and slow actions in this part of the text. There's a religious reference in line 44, "Sweet Jesus, help him," because Calpurnia is desperate for this situation so that everyone is safe. The writer then zooms in to Atticus in person and small details about his glasses, where they went, what he did with them. And there's also a contrast between the silence that everyone is now holding and also the crack of his glasses. And that crack is repeated when the rifle cracks later on, down in line 54. The word "finally" reflects the slowness of some of the action in this high tension sequence. And in line 55, the dog leaps, flops and crumples in a list of 3. In a short sentence at the end, the writer explains he didn't know what hit him. Putting it all together, you could mention that there are contrasts between fast and slow, and silence and loud noise. There is also a contrast in sentence lengths. There are short sentences. "In the silence I heard them crack," and "we saw his body go rigid." These also act as a contrast to the long explanatory sentences in the rest of this section. Question 1. Read lines 1 to 5. List 4 things the narrator thought about mad dogs. Look at the first sentence. That has all the information you need to answer this question. Question 5. Either write a description suggested by this picture of an angry dog, or write a story opening about a situation of fear. Set the scene vividly. Make sure you include good description in both tasks, although you're only going to do one. And don't forget that element of emotion that you must introduce into any creative writing. This shouldn't be a problem with a situation of fear or this description. And see my channel for other videos on spelling, punctuation and grammar, and other ways to improve your creative and descriptive writing. So use your writing checklist that you did recently. Make sure you introduce an emotional flashback. Proofread for errors, and don't forget, very importantly, make sure it's finished.